Okay, we can start.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This is the Apollo 11 fly the team to the moon project. I'm Rachel Siford. I'm a junior journalism major from Long Island.
I'm Maria Ansley, and I'm an MBA major. I'm a photometeorologist from the United States Air Force.
My name is Rossano, and I'm a master's student in biomedical engineering.
And I'm Yijun Xu from Shanghai, and my major was art administration.
So, when Sputnik was first launched into space in 1957, the United States went into a panic. President John F. Kennedy declared that we would have a man on the moon within 10 years. President Eisenhower created NASA in 1958, and between 1961 to 1964, NASA's budget increased 500%. Apollo suffered a setback in January 1967 when 3 astronauts were killed during a spacecraft caught fire during a launch simulation. The Apollo 11 space mission launched on July 16, 1969. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins set off on the first lunar mission attempt and were eventually successful.
Okay. The first situation, we're going to split this presentation up into 2 different situations. The first situation is strategies for change. The decision on exactly how to get to the moon was very complex, and it involved multiple meetings, people, teams, and especially vested interests. This is very simplified, where I attempted just to get into the issue of resistance to change in a group setting, where a particularly powerful individual held sway over a group dynamic. And they had opposing viewpoints to the person trying to assert themselves. And this is me. I've got an awesome idea. My name is John Hubel, and I'm an engineer at Langley. Unfortunately, I'm really shy, and I'm really soft-spoken, but I'm extremely strident when I believe in something. And I believe that there's only one way to get to the moon. The only way is the lunar orbit rendezvous model. Unfortunately, I need to convince 2 different agencies that this is the best idea, and it's really tough because I'm an outsider and my idea makes their idea look inferior. And particularly, I need to really convince that guy, Dr. Werner von Braun. He's charismatic, he's popular, he's gorgeous, and he's the rocket guy at Marshall. The very same guys that stand to lose the most from my idea, because the Earth orbit idea contains 2 Saturn V rockets, which he happens to build. And the direct Earth to Moon idea contains gigantic Nova rockets, which we don't have yet, but he happens to be building them. But if I can convince him, it's a go for my idea. So hi everyone. Did you get to read through my executive summary? A large Saturn V takes the command module and lunar module to the moon's orbit. Then this way the lens comes off, lands on the moon lightly and gently. The 2 astronauts can come down, and when they're done, they take this very light material up to the waiting 3rd astronaut in the command module, and they can go back to Earth. No huge Nova rockets, no trying to land them on the moon, no trying to get down off a huge rocket. Sounds good, right?
Yes, it was very nice and definitely something we can use in the future. But Earth's orbit rendezvous seems more feasible. We already have rocket capability, which my guys happen to be in charge of, and we can send them into Earth's orbit. A single final space shuttle and go to the moon.
Yes, but that also seems unsafe. If something goes wrong all the way out in the moon's orbit, it'll be hard to retrieve the astronauts when quickly to save them. But if they stick within the Earth's orbit, it'll be a little easier to help them if we need to.
Oh, listen, why don't you go make a minority report and get back to us?
I can't believe it! They did it again! First that jerk Max Faggot publicly screamed at me and called me a liar. Then they dismissed my idea to send me to go with the crackpots and their harebrained ideas. Is it invented here syndrome? Am I an outsider? I really think I'm going to get fired for this, but I really got to write that letter to Dr. Siemens. I'm going to write that minority report, send it to Dr. Siemens, and if he fires me, at least he heard me out. Well, the Space Task Group did come around, and Dr. Siemens apologized for the lack of psychological safety regarding the whole issue. They set up a talk where Cuba could present his idea to Von Braun. Von Braun realized that it really was the only way to get to the moon. He realized that if they were going to reach their goal in the time frame that Kennedy gave them, then they were going to have to use the lunar orbit rendezvous model. He decided to use his expert power and charisma to go against his team single-handedly. But it turns out Hubble was correct, and once the intellectually stimulating Von Braun supported his idea, it became the final choice.
So moving on to the next situation, the Apollo 1 disaster. As Rachel mentioned earlier, there was a setback in the process to get to the moon, and that was the Apollo 1 disaster that occurred in January of 1967. So these three men here, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, all died in a fire that started a pre-flight testing mission. These three men are the men that should have been on the first manned Apollo mission flight. So just some major factors that led up to the Apollo 1 disaster included an increased flow in oxygen. So the scientists and the astronauts all noticed that there was an increased flow of oxygen into the chamber. They proposed a possible reason why this was occurring, but they never, made sure that that was the reason or tried to fix it because they were under this intense pressure to, finish the test so that they can move on to the next phase of the mission and eventually go up into space. So they never really looked into the increased flow of oxygen because they didn't think that it would really be a problem in the grand scheme of things. They also had the test further delayed 1 hour due to team communication errors. There was an error with the communication system between the astronauts and the ground control. I believe it was Grissom who had serious problems with his communication, and eventually Grissom was still not in communication with the ground control once the test actually started. And then once the test started, within the first few minutes or so, a spark, they weren't really sure where it came from, but a spark ignited and spread throughout the cabin. They did have emergency preparedness drills that were supposed to be completed within 90 seconds that they had worked on previously. They had never completed it within 90 seconds. There was also engineering flaws with the emergency escape hatch that never were addressed properly or fixed. So overall, it's an issue with communication with the team as well as the preparedness. Kind of led to this Apollo 1 disaster.
And something we can learn from this tragedy. The first is the groupthink. Groupthink concepts are often reported as fact. Something must separate beliefs from scientific evolution. We have some suggestion that instead of glossing over increased oxygen flow to complete the testing, the scientists should have investigated the source of the problem and try to fix it. And groupthink can lead to ignoring outside information. Similarly, scientists were so focused on getting the testing completed, they ignore the fact that oxygen gas is very flammable and can potentially risk the well-being of the astronauts. organizational teaming expresses some symptoms of groupthink, positively related to team performance. Maintaining group identity inspires the team to work together and cope with external threats. Another thing is the psychological safety. High levels of psychological safety lead team to view failure as a learning opportunity and to seek feedback from outside sources. The last one is the time pressure. Since it was only 2 years between the Apollo 1 tragedy and the Apollo 11 landing moon, so both the case have the time pressure problem, and the time pressure attention tends to narrow and reducing the form of tunnel vision.
Oh, I guess I can. Well, as you can see, they made it, and with great fanfare. There's the command module, there's the flag, and there's one of the astronauts. But the icing on the cake is that Von Braun actually turned back to John Hubel and did as much of an apology as Dr. Von Braun is going to do. He said, that was a good idea you had, and thank you.
So some critiques for this would be that, so typically better team cohesiveness leads to better team performance, and in this case the team was not open to other people's ideas and didn't put into consideration diversity. And also groupthink was a major factor because the whole group controlled the way individuals thought, which made members scared to come out and say if they thought something was wrong or not. And in the end, this caused unnecessary tragedies. So recommendations would be that this group should have had more openness to ideas and better team cohesiveness.
Okay.